Good evening, everybody. This is Ryan from PerformaBuilt with another weekly video again. Today, the subject is going to be the 700R4 and TV cable adjustment and a few other things. Touching a little bit on the 700R4 and the 4L60E, its bigger, more advanced brother. Touching on this, I want to get into why these are so finicky for the average person, discouraging people more so to focus on them and not this, because quite simply, these are old and they don't work like new stuff does, which is pretty much what people expect now. I will touch on that in a minute. They're very high maintenance, and that falls 110% on you, and I can't stress that enough. On you. This thing has all mechanical, all hydraulic function. There is no electronics in it. It's got a TCC solenoid. It's either on or off, just like that one. That's the only electronic. It can still fail. These, touching back to the buyer's guide, are more for the street rod guys. You know, the Bel Air that you go on the cruise or stuff like that. There are some race applications available. I know I won't do it because I don't believe in it and I don't like them whatsoever. There's a constant pressure option available through many other companies that is usually for 1/8 mile bracket racing if you're really into that sort of thing. It's still not a great option as opposed to the 60E, but people do it, and I'm not going to knock them for it, but there are better things to put in your vehicle for those types of things. The constant pressure thing, the reason I don't do it is because, yes, it prevents any need for a TV cable, which most people are also scared of. But what constant pressure is, if you don't understand it, is right in the name. Constant pressure. Constant pressure is making it shift at wide open throttle all the time, even at part throttle. So if you think you're saving aggravation by buying a constant pressure unit from someone else, and then you bitch about it when you get it in your car and it shifts like it is has a sledgehammer in it all the time, even when you're pushing the gas like this much, that's constant pressure. And that's what breaks shit. It just does. And I think it's stupid, and I refuse to do it, and I won't do it. So please don't ask. But the right way to do these things is the TV cable. Now, what the TV cable does is it controls all pressure in the transmission, and it hooks to your carburetor, okay? Why I don't like this is because there's a lot of people with expectations. Let's say that again, expectations. Most people anymore, because of what we have in the car world nowadays, we have very nice 2022 Tahoes and Teslas and new ZL1 Camaros and stuff. These cars are comfortable. They feel good. They're usually pretty smooth, and they're just very modern. And I feel like a lot of people start having the expectation that they can make something old work like we are making things work now, and that's complete ignorance. There's going to be a lot of boomers that get pissed at me for this. Yes, you can make old muscle cars feel very modern. It's been done. We've been doing it. That's fine. But those guys are using electronic transmissions or stick shifts. Because stick shift, it don't change the feeling. It's up to the operator to change the feeling. And that's just how it is. These things are mechanically and hydraulically controlled. Every car you've had, probably from 1990 on, has been electronic. This is exact. Quite literally, the only difference between the 700 and the 60E is a mechanical valve body. That's all. Quite literally, 110% of this transmission, these two, are the exact same in the body. Same parts, you know, Yes, this is a fucking black edition, and I know it has billet, but if we had two identical stock transmissions, literal same, except for the valve body. Touching on that, mechanical things, usually, yes, are pretty instant, but hydraulics are not instant. They never will be. Electronics are instant, hydraulics are not. But with a computer mitigating hydraulics exactly, it works much better and it's much quicker, faster, more efficient. Here we have a literal gas pedal controlling pressure, and this thing called a governor controlling your shifts. We're going back into that. On this, we have two solenoids, a pressure solenoid, a pressure manifold switch, a 3-2 downshift, a PWM, and a TCC. That sounds scary, but it's not. These things are stupid. They're on or off. They don't know what to do. And that's how, quite simply, they work. They work on or off. It needs to be told what to do. And it can be tuned very exactly. This cannot. Never can, never will. So in place of the solenoids on that, this is your governor. This controls your shift points, okay? The governor, GM made about 3 different kinds. They made a V6, they made a V8, and they made a high performance V8, usually in the Corvettes or, you know, high output Camaros or something like that. You won't find a governor to fit your application anymore because GM had a recipe for the Corvette, for the Camaro, for the Chevy Silverado. They had a 26-inch, and I'm pulling numbers out of my ass, so don't literally, these are examples. They used, for example, like a 26-inch tire with a 373 ratio, so it would take this governor. That's not true anymore at all, because you get a hold of these muscle cars or whatever, and half of them aren't even original anymore, and they're all bastardized to hell. So instead of the 26-inch tire, now you're running a 28-inch radial, and then you went from a 273 to a 410 rear. Now you got to do it. It's all on you. So how this works is it spins in the back of the case here, which you probably can't see, but there's a little cover there. This spins in there, and what happens is the faster you go, or the faster the output shaft turns this gear, these tabs fly out, okay? When the tabs fly out, it strokes a valve in the center of this. Then that lets the fluid travel where it's supposed to go, first, second, third, fourth, and you make your shift. When there's that little bit of a lag time in the shift, these things close back up and they start speeding up again for the next shift. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty fucking complicated. So in those 3 different governors, there were different weights, which are these little blocks here on the inside, and there were different springs, which are also on the inside. Why not push a button? So there's a lot of guys, as an example, and why I'm irritated mostly, is we have all these new ideas in our heads because of all these new cars, and we just forgot what old stuff used to be, full of noises, and it wasn't soft and sweet, and it didn't ride like a Cadillac. It just didn't. Most of you can remember this and just really be real with me. I know I'm young, but I have old stuff that doesn't have insulation or seat belts or airbags and the gas tanks behind the seat, and it just feels like shit, but it's a lot of fun. Some guys like to buy these things now, and they want their shift points like 6,000 RPM in first gear only. You can't do it. If you somehow pull it off, I bet you've spent weeks. Because what you have to do is grind material off these weights, change weights to what's available, or change the springs on top of that. As an example, and I'm not perfect, trust me, I'm not full of myself, but I do know what I'm doing. In my truck 52, which had a 700 R4, and I have a 513 rear and a 26-inch tire, It took me about 3 weeks of constantly crawling under the truck, knocking the cap off, and playing with different setups to get what I wanted to feel. I got it close, but I couldn't get it right. That's probably due to the 513 rear, which is just fucking insane, but it's original. I left it alone. If I had a 373, it might have been easier. But that's what I'm saying. The aggravation of this is unnecessary. But if you got a nice little street rod that has 400 horsepower and you're not very picky about your shift points, you can usually throw a high output V8 one in and be fairly comfortable. It usually works. Take a little material here and there, you'll probably get what you want. That's what this transmission's for. It's not for race car guys anymore. Or guys that think it's going to be comfortable and it just isn't. It never was. Before we start on the TV cable, going back to some of that history, the reason why this thing isn't comfortable and never will be, because it never was from the start in 1982. In 1982, GM, instead of this big aluminum block here, had a nice flat steel plate. It's called a non-auxiliary. When you pull it from park into reverse or drive, it would kind of lurch your vehicle a little bit. Well, people bitched about it, so GM had to do something about it. So they made it a little bit softer with this forward accumulator, okay? Coupled with a little bit of a decrease in hole size, it got much better, but it is not near what this thing is, you know, post 1993 up. That's when this kind of took off. So there's a lot of guys with expectations, and I'll say that again, expectations. Throw them right out the window, because the race car never goes as expected. It just doesn't. And when you're dealing with something this old, I think it's stupid to have an expectation that it's going to feel like an 8L90. It just isn't. It was never made for that, and you can't do it. That's where your swap comes in. That's the theory behind why I think people still try to do this and are wasting their time. Like I said, it's great for the guy with the street rod. It's not great for the guy with expectations or a race car driver, because it's such a pain in the ass. You'll sell your car before you get it right. With that, you hit a button. Going more forward on that, let's talk about sensitivity. The biggest thing I wanted to talk about in this video, and I'm going to talk about TV cable adjustment, and this is to help you all at home or give you some insight before you purchase one of these, because you shouldn't be scared of electronics. It's time to embrace them. They're your friend, because with electronic transmissions, you can tell it what to do, and you can do it in about 5 minutes. Any good tuner can do it quicker. This thing controls your pressure, again, by this fulcrum and little throttle valve here. This is where people fuck up so bad. I personally didn't want to sell these anymore at one point in time, many years ago. I've made some videos to educate people about it and talked in forums, and it's gotten a lot better. I feel like I've done some good in the world. If that's what I take away in life, that's fine. This thing, the 4L60E, uses an electronic pressure control solenoid. It operates in a 5-step process and mitigates your pressure, all your shifts very nicely, depending on your throttle position sensor and mass airflow sensor. This thing has a valve. This hooks to your carburetor linkage or throttle body, depending on what kind of bastardized setup we're all doing. There's EFI fuel injection units that look like carburetors, whatever you're using. Either way, this is going to hook to it. I don't like these, and why is, this is an OEM one, and it is adjustable. There's a little locking tab here that you can slide back and forth, and I can't slide this one real good, even though it is practically new. This is a customer's unit. I'm just using it for an example. It was only back here because he didn't like how it did exactly what I was talking about here. It bumped a little bit in the drive. Me personally, it's one time, then you go driving, you know, you have to deal with it once, and it's really not that bad. For some people, it's uncomfortable. So I have compensated as much as I can do. But this is practically new. And you probably can't see it, but there's little teeth right here for the adjuster. You know, this piece slides back and forth and locks on these plastic teeth. These plastic teeth already are almost gone. So there goes your adjustment. These also like to stretch, just like any other cable would, constantly being used by the gas pedal, because your gas pedal goes up to your carburetor fulcrum, and this hooks to it as well. So when you stroke the gas pedal pulls the throttle blades open. This goes the opposite way and strokes the valve. The amount of maintenance on this transmission is unreal. It's just like most of you guys have had a carburetor. Maybe some of you haven't. But if you have, you know what I'm talking about. I have a carbureted vehicle, one of them. It's in my 52 truck, which I use as a great example for all this stuff. It's a Rochester 4-barrel. Every so often, usually every 6 months, it needs an air idle fuel adjustment, or I need to tighten the screws because it's leaking gas a little bit, or I just need to re-gasket the thing or lube it up a bit. It's a constant battle. Yes, it always works. Most of the time not well though, because it needs an adjustment and it's constantly degrading. Same with this. Those teeth are worn, the cable's stretching, and you always need to keep an eye on it, because that 1 mile you drive this thing and it ain't right, it will burn this up instantaneously. It is that sensitive. It is pressure. Pressure equals quality of shift. I can't stress that enough. How sensitive this is one more thing I want to touch before we zoom in here and I show you how sensitive this is. The carburetor fulcrums, or your throttle body fulcrums, especially if you're using aftermarket, are a nightmare sometimes. So you could be using Holly, Demon, Edelbrock, Rochester, what have you. There are different fulcrums for these different carburetors, and there's usually several different fulcrums for each carb. What those fulcrums do isn't just to be there, and one size does not fit all. They are there in case, no matter what you do down here or up top or on this adjuster, and you can't quite get this valve stroked, you will have to change fulcrums to get it right. And that is a nightmare. This is where people usually fail a lot with these, and it will burn up so fast. And it's on you, 100%. There's going to be a lot of boomers that get mad at me. There's going to be a lot of prideful guys that are older. I know I'm 32, but I've done this a lot, and mine actually runs, and it has ran for 4 years. I know what I'm doing. All these things, adjusters, slacking, it's no good. It's no good anymore. It'll never feel like you want it to nowadays. It's an old transmission. It's meant for old stuff, and it doesn't feel as crisp as the new stuff now because it's old. Like, let's just be honest with ourselves. The most important thing can go two ways. This is why you can't keep a 700 along with this. So this valve right here is your throttle valve. That works with your gas pedal and your throttle blades. When your gas pedal is fully depressed, that valve should be all the way in. And I'm pulling on the TV cable right now. When you let off the gas, that valve, this fulcrum right here, see it moving? That needs to be just touching it, not pushed in, just touching it, and not slacked off. The slacked off part, like this, where there's a 1/4 inch gap between the valve and the fulcrum, is where everybody makes a mistake usually. The other one is, it's pushed in a little far, and it doesn't take much. Having it off like this will cause your transmission to burn up within about 1 mile to 5 miles. What's happening here is your carburetor or your throttle body and your gas pedal will probably have full throttle and your engine's working fine. But that moment where you're pushing the gas and this is taking its time, look at that, all that time to hit the valve. This transmission thinks it's at idle. It's not putting pressure to the packs. It's not really working, putting undue stress on it. Look at all that room. That's almost half your gas pedal, maybe a quarter. I don't like to exaggerate and I apologize for that. It's about a quarter of your gas pedal push. And on the TV cable, yes, it is roughly about 1/2 inch. The reason why this isn't good, even this, do you see this little bit here? Do you see that little tiny motion? There's a lot of people that do that. Now, that's not necessarily going to burn up your transmission, but it's going to make it very uncomfortable at part throttle because just that tiny little movement right there is about a 20-pound increase, maybe 15. It kind of depends on the application. Some of our transmissions have 220, others have 180 pounds, depends what we're building for. But this is roughly, just that little bit is a 10 to 15 pound increase or so. This is going to cause your transmission to slam into reverse and drive when you're sitting still with your foot on the brake, and you ain't going to like it. And it's also going to cause it to be more violent at part throttle shifts, which you're not going to like either. And it's just not correct, because when you're fully stroked and it's already pushed in, then it's going to stop your gas pedal and your other stuff from working because the cable's topped out. And it's going to put stress on your gas pedal cable or whatever the hell your setup is. This is no, and how touchy this is, and the reason why I don't like plastic teeth, because I'm just doing this with my fingers. We have this little motion here, which is wrong. That. It is just touching it. And there's not a tooth on this cable that can get it there. So for you guys with that want a 700, which is fine to do, I'm not going to refuse or anything. Summit Racing has a fantastic TV cable that is all stainless steel and braided, and it's got an adjustable piece of split shot with an Allen key at the end. It will take some time, but that is what I recommend, and that's what I have used, and it's about 40 bucks, and it makes it much better than this OEM piece of trash. Setting the TV cable is a sensitive topic. There's a lot of people that just tell me they got it right when clearly I can see they didn't. The process which I recommend requires 2 people. Get a buddy. If you're alone, you're gonna have to work real hard, but get a buddy. Have one person in the cockpit and the other in the running around the truck basically, or the car. So have your buddy push the gas all the way and take the pan off I know we don't want to take the fucking pan off. Take the pan off, please. It's the only way to do this. Don't take shortcuts. It ain't gonna work. Never does. Take the pan off, put your buddy in the cockpit, and have him push the gas all the way with everything hooked up the way you think it should be. With the gas pushed all the way, it should look like this. It should be fully stroked, planted right in there. Then have him depress the gas at idle. It should not be back here. It should be right there, just touching it, not moving that valve even a little bit. Not this, not that, just this. It's even hard for me to do like holding the thing, let alone doing this in a vehicle. And that's what I'm trying to get at. So to just run through this again, have your buddy in the cockpit, take the pan off the transmission. Do not fill it up yet. Have him push the gas all the way. Stroked all the way. in the transmission, as well as your carburetor should be. Have them let off. Just touching it. Not even that. Sorry, that's a bit too much. Not even this. This. Right there. Just ever so slightly. That's going to ensure the health of your 700. If neither one of these scenarios is playing out for you, then you need to go up to the top where your carburetor and throttle body are and possibly order some different forms for the carb. And that usually fixes people. There's only so many and they're pretty easy to put on. So in short, chances are you see how sensitive this was, and if one of these has burned up on you, I'm almost guaranteeing it's probably your fault. And I'm not saying that as a PerformaBuilt person. I'm saying that as if you pulled one of these out of the junkyard and burned one up because you didn't know what you were doing with this or that, it's on you, because this thing depends on you more than you know to be right. It depends on the maintenance, just like a carburetor. This thing, yeah, you could do some things to mess it up, but chances are it's usually the tranny or the torque converter or something like that, because I mean, shitty tunes happen. You can do that too. But the failure rate for these is so much less. I mean, so much than this. So this is Ryan from PerformaBuilt wrapping you up another wholesome video. And to tell you to get with the times. If you want to be a race car driver, let's throw some technology in there. If you want to cruise, this is fine, but not for much else. And then, no, I will not do constant pressure. It's dumb. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.